Welcome, everyone. A very important part in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was the Isra and the Miraj. It's an incident that we really need to understand well because it has such implications for us in our own lives. I am Dr. Zleya Keskin. I lecture in Islamic spirituality, and I have Dr. Omer Atilla Ergi with me, who lectures in Islamic theology. He's also an expert in physics and astronomy. So we thought that this topic would be a great one for us to come together and discuss. Welcome, Dr. Omer.
Thank you, Zleya. Happy to be here.
That's good. I guess my first question to you is, what is the Isra and Miraj for the audience who may not know the details? Can you tell us briefly?
Maybe basically, briefly, we should define what Isra and Miraj is. It's the night that the noble Prophet Muhammad والسلام, was taken from Mecca to Masjid al-Aqsa, which is Qudus. And then he was ascended through the heavens, and he had a private audience with God Almighty. Wow. So basically, that's what Isra and Miraj is.
Yeah. Great. So it's quite a significant event, an unusual event that did happen. I guess one question that comes to mind is this sense of ascension. We know that the vehicle was Burak, and often it's known as a horse. What are your thoughts on this? Was it a horse with wings that took him up into the heavens?
Well, look, the classical scholars generally defined it as horse, but we don't see really, from the Prophet ﷺ saying it was a horse. In fact, in one hadith, he describes it about the size of it. He says between a horse and a mule. So, but that was only a definition of the size. But the fact that Jibril, angel himself, also mounted it, so they went together. It sort of gives me the impression it was some sort of a divine vehicle. So not just an animal, because the second part, it would be quite difficult to explain.
With Jibril alayhi salam being with him? That part?
No, after Isra, when they went to Qudus, the ascension, because we know that the noble Prophet ﷺ ascended through the heavens.
Through the heavens,
and scholars say he went out of the universe.
Yeah, wow.
That's a very interesting thing, the entire universe. And these days, contemporary science tells us that the universe is about 93 billion light years thick. So you need tremendous velocities, and we know that in physics you cannot travel faster than light. No matter can travel faster than light. So something unusual occurred there because he did go out of the universe. There was a point, in fact, like Fahrettin Razi, the great Mufassir, says, he came to a point where it was between the necessary existence and possible existence. It's called imkan and wujud. So he went out of the possible existence, which is the universe, the created universe. He said he was in a point between the two. And this is tremendous, like going out of the universe. How did this happen? You cannot describe it through, things like, winged horses and, climbing up a ladder or something like that.
Yeah, true. And I guess, it shows that people at the time tried to make sense of things by what's available to them. Today, someone might say I was a spaceship because spaceships exist today. Tomorrow, something else will exist and they'll, suggest that as a vehicle.
Definitely.
So it does show that.
I agree with that because, yes, at those days, people, when they heard the news that someone traveled through air, the first thing that would come to their mind, some sort of a mount with wings. That's why they sort of depicted it as
a fast horse. Animal, which they had lots of.
Has to be very fast, Burak. Okay. But Burak, if you look at the term Burak, it comes from lightning anyway. So it has to be something different that would take them, with, amazing speeds, velocities. But the second part of the journey, as you know, in Islamic theology, especially mainstream theology, Aqidah of Sunnah wal Jamaat, if somebody denies the first part of the journey, which is Isra, it's considered as disbelief, kufr. But if you deny the second part, the Miraj, they consider it as dalale, going astray. But the first part is in the Quran, very clear. It says, we took our servant from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa. But the second part, the Prophet himself explains it to us. There are also signs about the second part, which is Miraj, Uruj, and it means ascension. That's the Sure-i Najm, as I remember. It's mentioned in there about Sidratil Muntaha, where he went, the level that he's gone to. And also, it's interesting that the entire chapter starts with, about a star, because Najm means star, When Najm is a Hawa, it means, the exploding star, a star that, collapses on itself, goes dark, if you look at the definitions. So the relation there, you can see that it's something astronomical. So the Prophet did ascend, physically.
Okay, that's my question, because there are some arguments that it wasn't a physical ascension, that it was a spiritual ascension. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it was definitely physical from a, Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat perspective. The Mu'tazila, the rationalist school of reason, they use everything with logic, or they try to interpret everything with logic. They thought it was impossible for a human being to ascend through the heavens. Again, at that time, they couldn't maybe grasp it, and they said it was spiritual, or it was something like a dream. That was their argument.
Is it physically or scientifically possible for someone to ascend at that speed? Or is it a miracle, I guess? We say that,
it is. Of course, it's a miracle, but even miracles have causality. We know that they occur through causality as well. But some part of that causality is usually broken.
Like Ibrahim alayhi salam, when the fire didn't burn him. So normally fire burns you, whereas there it didn't. So you're saying it's the same here.
Maybe some people might find it hard to grasp and understand how he ascended through, 93 billion light years. But I can use an analogy here. For example, if we had this huge hole, a room, really large room, and let us say in the one corner of the room, there's this tiny bacteria. And we know how small bacteria is. Maybe in the carpet, one grain of the carpet, wool, is like the entire planet for that bacteria. It wouldn't just go around it. It's so small. And if the one bacteria said to the other one, last night I went to the end of the room and came back, the other one would say, are you crazy? That's impossible.
It's too far.
Yeah, but what if we include an external agent there? Someone who picks up the bacteria, takes it to the other side and brings it back. That would take minutes.
Very possible.
So it could happen very quickly. So we know that the power of Allah is not limited. But as I said, there must be a means there, some sort of a means when they ascended, because both the Prophet and Jibreel, the angel, they ascended together. Now, we know that angels are very fast, because if we look at Surah Ma'arij, verse 4, where the Quran says, the spirit and the angels, spirit refers to Jibreel in that verse, they ascend to him in a day which is 50,000 years of your time. So for the angels' velocity of a day passes, but for us 50,000 years passes. So they are very fast. We know that. But Prophet Muhammad is a human. He's got a physical body. So when he ascended through the heavens, he needed some sort of protection. He needed to be in something, some sort of a vehicle. That's why I'm saying it was a divine vehicle. And I am arguing that it's probably Jibreel alayhi salam was navigating this vehicle, whatever it was. He was navigating it.
He was navigating it. Okay. Because he's familiar with the speed and the directions
and the universe.
Okay.
But what are the alternatives? It's more. To me, it's more illogical to think that Jibreel angel takes Prophet Muhammad in his arms or something like that and flies up. It doesn't sound
they sit on a horse.
Like a Superman movie or something like that. This is more logical because it's within the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes people say even with the velocity of light, it wasn't possible for them to go up out of the universe and come back on the same night. But
because there's a hadith that his bed was warm when he returned. So it was very quick. It all happened very quickly.
Yeah, they say it takes about 20 minutes for a bed to get cold.
Okay.
But this hadith is not strong hadith. It's not sahih. They say it's very weak. But either way, it doesn't really matter. It needed to be tremendous speeds. And one thing that comes to my mind again, I'm going to be a little bit astrophysical here again.
All right.
I believe that we know that there may be wormholes in the universe.
Wormholes. Okay.
They are like bridges between galaxies or shortcuts.
Right.
And perhaps Jibril knows exactly where all of them are. He may have used these wormholes to appear on the other side straight away. Very quickly. It is possible too. But I have no doubt in my mind when I look at the Quran and the Hadith narrations that the Prophet did go, up or ascend physically. It wasn't just spiritual.
And it sounds like the more we understand, mind you, I feel like I'm listening to Interstellar. Have you watched Interstellar?
About 7-8 times.
I watched it 3 times. I think I still am trying to fully grasp it. But I guess my point is the more we understand science, the more these things seem possible. That's the amazing thing. But my next question to you is, like, our Prophet ﷺ ascended to the heavens physically. Did he see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, did he see him?
That's a very interesting question too. Well, if we look at the hadith, when he returned, they did ask him this question. And he said, on one occasion, he said, I have seen Allah. On the other occasion, he said, I have seen a nur, light, some sort of a light. And there is a controversy between the Sahabis in regards to this as well. Like Hazreti Aisha, she says, whoever says the Prophet saw Allah himself, they are lying. That's what Aisha is saying. But other scholars say because Aisha was too young then, because it happened in Mecca, 621, year 621. And Aisha was probably 12, 14 or something like that. So they say she could not have remembered the incident. But Ibn Abbas, he says that the Prophet saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the 2 eyes on his head. So he actually saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Qadi Iyas, famous Sirah scholar, confirms this. And Bediüzzaman Said Nursi also confirms it. But from a theological perspective, I think what he saw was the nur of Allah. Because nur is the veil of Allah. It's not himself, because Allah cannot be encompassed. Because the Quran says, he encompasses all eyes, but no eyes can encompass him. So it was probably the veil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nur, light of Allah. But they did have a private audience. They did have a conversation.
Wow.
Because this is recorded. We know that. So it is fascinating. And it's interesting that it occurred at a time where the Prophet needed the support the most, isn't it?
That's right. So that's another important, like the year of sorrow, that's what the year that he lost his uncle, Abu Talib, and he lost his wife, Khadija, radiallahu anha, and that they had the 3 sanctions. So it's a very dark, when I say dark, a difficult time where there was, they were potentially going to be extinct as Muslims. When you put yourself in that situation,
all alone.
You're alone. Of course, he had trust in Allah. But it's still difficult. Like it was a very sad time for him. His 2 main supports were gone. And so for him to, as you said, have experienced this Miraj about 1.5 years after, or 1.5 to 2 years after that, it's quite significant, isn't it? What's the message?
Imagine that 1.5 years what he went through though.
Waiting for this.
Because they say, like Hazreti Hatija, tremendous woman, maybe. Sometimes I explain these when I have halakas, and I say to people, how some people think that Islam doesn't value women that much and things like that, I say, if you get all the scholars together in the world, in the past too, I say, I don't think they can match a hair on Hatija's head. She was such a tremendous woman. And, when she passed away in the year of sorrow, she was in the arms of the noble Prophet. And the Prophet was weeping. His tears fell onto her face. And she said, what makes you weep? She's still thinking about him at that point. She's dying. And the noble Prophet said, this happened to you because of me. And then she said, Wallahi, if I had to go through these things for you all over again, I would do it 1,000 times.
Amazing.
This is how unique she was. She gave everything, for his path.
Yeah.
And imagine losing her.
Yeah, and he appreciated that. Like, that's
Yes.
such a big thing. Sometimes people can go above and beyond for someone, but they don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
The Prophet ﷺ appreciated it. And we know, like, for years afterwards, he was his loyalty to her was so evident because he would visit her friends, family members. He would remember, he would talk about her.
Yeah.
But also there's narrations that when she passed away, he didn't smile for months. Like, it really hit him hard.
Yes,
and that he was somewhat... I wouldn't say completely isolated because he was a prophet, but he wasn't as present. And again, it shows that sometimes when you're grieving, you do pull away a little bit, but also that there's that aspect, but also he had young children he had to look after as well.
Yes.
So there's all these challenges.
Another thing was, because we were talking about Miraj.
Yeah.
He lost Hatija and Abu Talib, not long between them, one after the other. And some say that it was, for him, it felt like his both arms being amputated. Because they both, the major supporters of him. And he was so sad, and he had to do his mission.
That's right, despite all those challenges. But so it just, I guess, to me, it highlights that when we go through difficult times, and yes, it did take a year and a bit or two before the Miraj happened, but that Miraj was a spiritual, it's symbolic in a way of spiritual elevation as well.
Yes, definitely.
So when we go through hardships, there could be immense spiritual elevation that happens that nothing else can facilitate in a way.
Yes. I remember one scholar who passed away. His name was Mehmed Ali Şengül. He used this term. You made a very good definition there. He said there is a rank in spiritual levels. You can reach it no other way but through sabr, patience. And the Prophet had to go through that during that period.
Yeah.
And then finally, Allah the Almighty, God Almighty, actually consoled him. It was sort of a consolation, wasn't it, when he took him out to heavens.
Yeah.
And that was another honor, I think, there that comes to my mind. It is not just about the Prophet, ascending, but he is representing humanity, all of us. So he's honoring all of us there on behalf of us.
And even the fact that the 5 daily prayers was given at that, that really shows the value and the importance of the 5 daily prayers, because it was in that interaction that commandment came. It could have been in other formats.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But
at
also
that time,
and in a way, it shows that if we're going to, we can't have the Miraj like the Prophet, but if we're going to have a closeness to Allah, our closest is going to be through Salah, through the 5 daily prayers. Which is like Miraj. And there is a hadith that says the closest a person is to Allah is in the moment of prostration.
Sajda,
sajda.
That is proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are many aspects, like we said, to Miraj. I don't know, you can talk about it for hours maybe. But that side is very important too, because the noble Prophet visiting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or having a private audience. One scholar says, and I find this quite amazing too, he says, Wallahi, billahi, tallahi, if I went there, I would have never came back. I find that's quite amazing too, because you're with Allah. That's the highest level.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Can I give you an analogy to explain how I somewhat grasp that? I don't know if you've ever traveled, but when you go to check in, go economy, and they say, sorry, economy's booked. We're going to give you business. I'm like, whoa, I'm not complaining. So I went on business, but then it was a transit. The next flight was economy. Do you know how hard it was to going back to economy after business? So when I experienced that, I thought, imagine our Prophet ﷺ, he sees Jannah, like he sees heaven.
Yes.
And then to come to this measly life in a way, like this difficult life for the sake of his ummah, it's such a huge sacrifice.
Just for us. He came back just for us.
Just for us, but he had the choice.
Yeah, and that's the way he was, wasn't he? They say that when the day he was born, as a baby, he was crying, Ummah, Ummah, all his life. He said Ummah for us.
Yeah.
And there are reports that on the day of judgment, when he is resurrected, the first thing he's going to ask, what happened to my people?
Yeah.
So he was always concerned about
Amazing.
and came to this little tiny, troublesome world from there. And I find that quite amazing. Yes.
Well, so we've covered a lot there. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Inshallah, we are able to better understand and absorb and contemplate on this amazing experience that happened to our Prophet ﷺ and replicate it in whatever way we can in our life. Thank you.
Thank you.